Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. This is a podcast for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault, whether as a child or as an adult. Know that you are not alone and the abuse was not your fault. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a certified recovery life coach and also a survivor. Let's find hope and healing together. And welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I'm your host, Mike Chapman. And with me today is Rick Carlson. More about him in a moment. And we often record live. If you would like to learn more about being in our audience for future live podcast recordings, you can learn more about how to do so at polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And let me introduce you to my good friend and fellow husband material coach, Rick Carlson. Rick Carlson is an ordained pastor who works and oversees the recovery, support, and next steps ministries at his local church in Atlanta, Georgia. He is a CCAR certified coach, which also I am. That's out of a program in Connecticut, though we did our training with someone out of Washington State. So a mutual friend. So amazing how that works. A husband material certified coach, trauma-informed specialist, certified peer counselor, and pastoral staff counselor. And Rick has had God help him overcome adversity through almost dying during birth, learning to walk a few years after birth, beating all the obstacles of that, plus overcoming alcoholism and drug addiction, trauma and sexual brokenness trauma, and sexual brokenness that included being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And so I want to welcome Rick Carlson to the program, and we'll start this episode like we do most episodes with 4 questions. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. So Rick, what is your favorite food memory?
It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're quite welcome.
My favorite food memory has to do with potatoes. When I was young, yes. I am legendary known as my obsession with potatoes, almost on a daily basis. Here's a scoop. When I discovered potatoes were a thing for me, I was around, I would say, 10 years old. I really loved potato chips. And then a relative was at a family event at one time, and that happened to be my grandma. And I watched her make mashed potatoes. And I actually loved the process and the way it came out in the big Tupperware bowl, known at those times. I watched her.
The big green one for
yes,
that
yes.
It's supposed to use for lettuce, but we use it for everything but.
Yeah. Yes. And it could have been yellow, but it was one of those, you know?
Yes.
And I just watched the whole process and how the potatoes came together, and I fell in love officially with potatoes at that time. And I never forgot that image and that memory, and it fueled me and guided me into the potato land that I love to this day.
Yeah. Thoroughly enjoyed making food with family members, whether it was my mom or either of my grandmas. Yeah. Classic memories. And I do have a love for cooking. I mostly love baking, but definitely got that from all those different family members. Really enjoyed that. And a wonderful
awesome.
Creative outlet. So what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
My favorite Christmas holiday memory is actually watching the old-fashioned Christmas movies. I, in particular, loved our family. We all liked the original Scrooge. And
now, which one? There's several original Scrooges, but Who's the actor who played Scrooge?
The original one. He back for, I believe, was for the 40s. Yeah, I think back in the 1940s.
Okay.
Yeah, we memorized that so well that we could speak off the lines before they came on the TV.
Nice.
That was a cherished memory, and to this day, that we still enjoy that. I always look forward to that. And then later on, The Christmas Story, which a lot of people do not enjoy that movie or yet.
You'll poke your eye out. Yes.
Exactly.
Nice retro look at Christmases past.
Right. Those are my 2 favorite ones that as a kid and as an adult. And I just watched The Christmas Story again over the holiday break.
Yeah, I do like, I've seen several versions, but my favorite Christmas Story version is Muppet Christmas Carol. And they say it's actually the most faithful because they throw in the Charles Dickens character to do the narration, even though it's Gonzo, and they crack jokes the whole time. But because of that, they say, yeah, this is the most faithful adaptation. There was an updated one back in the 70s, and we found it. They showed it on some of the free streaming platforms, an American Christmas Carol. And it had Henry Winkler, a.k.a. the Fonzie, as Ebenezer. And so they aged him up for the current Ebenezer equivalent that was all in America. They changed the names, but it's the same story. But then it was his normal face for all of the flashbacks when he was young. So, but great story, a very, very similar setup. And they just kind of redid it for made-for-TV audiences back in the 70s. And yeah, it's a cool version as well. So what is your favorite church or house of worship memory?
I actually like, at our local church, we actually have what we call planned out through the year, several events of night of worship. And that's where it's just a service of complete worship. And I actually love that, what we call corporate worship together.
Yeah, I love that.
It's so authentic and so raw, and people are just very responsive. And those who attend that, who have the opportunity to attend that, really zone in on the worship. And it just is very uplifting. And it's always a time where you can just meet God in a way that is so encouraging, because you just get a moment without distractions and really praising Him. It's pretty awesome.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Anytime we had corporate worship at my church, would love doing that, especially when there's no timetable. So it's just, okay, you've got this huge block of time. And so it's not like, okay, we have to do 3 and then the pastor speaks. So it's like, yeah, you can take time. Oh, if Spirit leads, okay, we're going to do this a little bit more, or we're going to just do some free worship or whatever and throw things in. And such a blessed time without a lot of structure. And I enjoy those for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So what is your favorite scripture or any inspirational quote that has helped you on your spiritual journey, and what about it speaks to you?
Lamentations, it talks about the verse, His mercies are new every morning. I absolutely love that verse, because I know my purpose these days in my journey. And I look forward to that morning time where I can greet the Lord each morning and thank Him for waking me up, right? And also what it does is also helps me reset from the day before. Because if you realize His mercies are new every morning, man, that's something to look forward to, right?
Absolutely.
What a way to start the day. Yeah, what a way to start the day.
Yeah.
And I read that verse over and over again, and I share it with people, especially when they are discouraged or maybe needing uplifting or affirmation, or they just need to realize what the Lord can do for them and through them. So that verse speaks to me every single time.
Excellent. So would love to hear more about your own journey, your abuse history. You mentioned that in the intro. And then would love to hear more about your healing journey, what things you have tried that have worked, and what things you may have tried that didn't work or were less than successful. I know certain things work for some people, but not others. So would love to hear how you navigated that. And then would love to hear, and I would love to hear more about what you're doing today as far as the different ministries you're involved with, what you're doing in your church, and so forth.
So life for me, Mike, started out in a very rough place and rough space. There was a lot of controversy, if you will, that I was born outside of a marriage situation. And my father, my birth father, was not very pleased that my mom was pregnant by him. And my mom was going through a very rough time in her life at that time. And he basically wanted nothing to do with my pending existence. And my understanding is that when he found out my mom was pregnant, he was married to his wife, not my mom, of course. He gave her money at that time to get rid of the problem. He said, and he walked away, and he abandoned my mom and myself. And my mom also had 2 other children at the same time, in a very rough space.
From the same man or from other men?
A different marriage prior to that.
Okay.
And so it was a really rough rough space. And she was coming out of a marriage that she was presently in that my understanding was abusive. So imagine being in that spot and meeting a man, my birth father, who connected with her, and the result was pregnancy. Well, during the 6 month or so, there were a lot of complications that happened, but a real tragic accident happened during that time where it forced me to be born, and there was no choice. But in that process, my mom almost died in the process. I almost didn't make it. And after obviously in the birthing process, there were a lot of complications, and there was brain damage. And so my diagnosis was pretty grim, and they really didn't think I would make it after that. My understanding is I was born at 2.5 pounds. So I was a little thing, right? I was a little,
yeah,
that's just tiny, right?
Yeah. I've had preemie babies, and they come and bring them to Santa, which they really shouldn't, because their immune systems aren't strong enough. And I'm holding my breath while I'm holding this little tiny, could fit in my single palm, little teeny tiny baby. And yeah, they're just so tiny. And yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it had to be very rough. So I also understand that that first year, I spent a lot of time in the hospital trying to make it. So as you can see, all these years later, I am here and I'm doing well, right? And it took me several years to be able to learn how to walk. And I do recall learning to walk, and I wore braces up to my waist, which gave me stability to stand. So I had to wear those. They're kind of they were similar to the Forrest Gump type braces.
Right. But his only went up to his knees, but yours went all the way up to the waist.
All the way to my waist, yeah.
Wow.
Because I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk. So that gave me a sense of stability there. But I had poor coordination, and I didn't have a really good balance. So I had a lot of memories of being there. My mom had, in that process, also had remarried into the man that would raise me and take care of me in the process. He got me connected to an organization, and it was called Easter Seals back in the day. So they still exist.
Yes.
And so I went there.
And they do a lot of work for disabled children. Absolutely. Right. They still do. Yes.
Right. So I went there, and that's where all that learning to walk and things. So I have a lot of memories of that and going through that process. And as a kid, I was just a happy little kid with the braces. I didn't understand the contraption. And there are a lot of things that I went through during that process that was hard for me to go through, but I was a determined little kid. I didn't really have a lack of ability, to do a lot of things that the normal kids would do. But man, I was slow, but I got there eventually.
Right.
So I was probably a stubborn little kid, and that stubbornness is alive and well today. I think that's a fuel. You never give up. I spent time in those braces a number of years. I outgrew those. It was a difficult thing as a kid to go through because I was taunted at times. I was made fun of. I didn't understand why this was happening. And there was just a communication barrier, I think, within my parents, and explaining that is probably a hard thing for them to go through as well. And I understand that now, looking from a compassionate perspective and compassion in my heart. That's a lot. And also they were building more additional family members, having children of their own. So they grew to have 7 altogether. So it was quite the tribe. Interesting enough, though, I never went into special classes. I joined regular classes with regular students. When I really knew that I was different, when I realized it big time, was in kindergarten. And in those days, you went to kindergarten half a day, and then there was a nap time where all the students had to lay down and take a nap. Well, I couldn't do that. And so I was forced to sit in a chair and just sit there. And I go, why don't I get included? Why am I excluded? Why am I like this? Well, someone let me lay down. So they never allowed that because you can get down, but it's hard to get out. And that was part of the issue as well. So those things formulated in my brain and in my heart and emotions. Why am I so different? Can someone at least explain this to me? And so there was the lack of that opportunity. Just started growing up and going to school, and I did the best I could, and I was a friendly little kid. But what happened was around 9 years old, I actually found out that the dad that was raising me wasn't my actual father. and I was sworn to secrecy. And then that began to destroy me and harm me.
Did the father know that you weren't his?
Yes, technically he was my stepdad, right? Right. But what I'm saying to you is I found out from someone else that he wasn't my biological father. And as a 9-year-old, how do you process that?
Right. So somebody else told you that. It wasn't your family members who told them. Okay, gotcha.
Right. So I was sworn to secrecy, and I did that. And I didn't know what to do with the information. I think at that point, I began to shut down. Later on, in the same time period within the year, and I won't go into any sort of details or name anybody, but it was the first time that I experienced the sexual abuse. And again, I was sworn to secrecy. And
what role did that person have? Were they just someone you knew or friend of the family or someone from?
They were a family person. Okay. And I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I felt paralyzed. As a kid, you don't know how to even react or respond, but you know that you have fear. And of course, I had to keep it a secret because that's what I was told to do. And I understand as an adult and these days I'm doing the work that we both get to do, that secrecy is a part of that. And then there was another incident with another individual a little later on that I understood later that was abusive. Again, it caused a lot of confusion. And by that time, I just begin to feel gross as a person, as a boy, as a young person.
Yeah, very, very normal feelings, feeling dirty, feeling soiled. Well, yeah, unclean. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But who am I going to tell? Who am I going to tell? Who's going to believe me? Who's going to articulate? Is this my fault? Did I do something? Did I deserve this? Was I a stronger person, have power over me? I felt that the person and the persons did have power over me in such a way, if that makes sense. But it began to destroy my ability to connect. And even as a kid, I became a loner and isolated. It was so destructive to me, but I carried that and I carried that and I carried that. I told no one. I would say then I think this contributed, both those abuses and the finding out the information about my father. And I began to worry, where's my father? Where's my father? Where's my father? But I had no one to turn to. And I began to fantasize about my father and where was he? And then I had all these physical things, and you combine all that together, and inside I felt so unlovable, so distant, so discarded. And then when I was 12 years old, I had my first drink. And when I was 12 years old, I also smoked marijuana for the first time. And I recognized my opportunity to escape and to hide from pain. It felt so good. I didn't have to be me. And every time I partook, and that was obviously in secret as well, I could escape and become a different.
Right.
And I recognized that was a pathway.
Bring out Party Rick. Party Rick comes out.
Right. So I dabbled in that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I know. So substances, when you are in pain, you need to do something to numb it if you're not able to address it, like a healthy adult would. You do what you can to deal with it or not deal with it so you can move on, whether it's substances or porn use or whatever it is. People find that way to numb it so you can survive. And that's what you needed to do in order to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to survive. Any chance I had to numb it. I also took the other thing I read a lot of books, right? Which was another escape. I always had to escape. And I created my own little worlds constantly. And there were times I with other kids or other young people in that age category, but I always felt alone because I didn't feel like I had a voice. And I just didn't think I was good enough for anything. Looking back, I learned to compartmentalize very brilliantly and put on the smile, put on the brave, and be that way. But inside, I was empty and isolated. And then we did have Christianity in the home as well. And sometimes that didn't align with me too well. I wanted that to work. It was confusing because inside I wanted God to love me, but I also thought he was a bullier and he was out to destroy my life. Again, I kept all these thoughts and all these emotions inside myself. Well, they were waiting to bust out at some point. And once I graduated from high school and was able to leave home pretty quickly. I couldn't wait to get out. And within a year, I'd say by the time I was 19, I could say that I was an alcoholic at 19 for sure. And had no regard for my body as far as the substances that I put in. So I dabbled in a lot of different dangerous drugs. All drugs are dangerous, for the record.
Right. Interesting that you say that you had no regard for your body and what it could do to it. And that parallels what those people who did those bad things to you had no regard for your body. That saw you as lacking in value or worthless enough to do horrible things to you, not valuing you as a person with rights and feelings and so forth. And then you carried that on yourself and saw yourself also as having no value. Yeah.
Right. So I spent a lot of years just looking for love and putting myself in very dangerous situations, allowing myself to be in situations that were not good. I didn't have the capacity to even understand healthy relationships, intimate relationships, or being able to connect healthy with people. I went through 4 rehabs in over a decade as far as for the drug addiction and alcohol. And it didn't solve anything because I wanted to be rescued and I didn't know how to be restored. I could clean up a little bit for about a few days, right? Well, during the treatment time, for sure. And I come back and maybe be a week or two clean, but I was right back at it. And as I still hurt, I would use a couple of the same lines. Well, I felt this about my family, or I felt this, or I felt this, but I didn't know how to go any deeper because I just didn't. I was stuck.
Right.
So it became a cycle. I did overcome drug overdoses, a couple of suicide attempts, to be honest, and because I just wanted to delete the pain.
Right.
Delete the pain. So I just stayed in those cycles, and a lot of sexual brokenness happened in those years as well. And that include porn and sexual activity. Like I said earlier, no regard for my body. And also I had to be intoxicated or high even to be a participant in encounters and things because I hated my body. I hated myself. And then I hated who I was. That's pretty raw. Yeah. So the decade started to climb. And I also, at one point, I never went back to the hardcore drugs. However, I just indulged in the alcohol and the marijuana it all became what I was centered around. So I worked hard at my job, but guess what? I couldn't wait for my next high, my next buzz, my next pain-free moment. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be cared for.
Right. I
just wanted to matter. And so you go searching in these circles, these places with people, and thinking that you'll find that. And guess what? I did not. I did not.
Right.
And I became angrier and angrier and angrier. I became more resentful. I became unreachable. And I didn't have any real meaning in life other than just to work hard and exist. And if I woke up, I woke up. If I didn't, I didn't.
Wow. Well, so what changed? What happened in your life that led you to become this Rick Carlson?
Well, it was quite extraordinary. I was visiting friends in the area that I live in, and I lived 45 minutes away on the other side of the city. And I didn't have a lot of contact with my family, enough to show up for some special events because we all lived at various states and places. And I wanted to be as far away from them as possible because I was so mad at them all the time, right? That was a Rick thing. So on this particular weekend in 2010, I was invited to this church. It was its 3rd week in existence. And they stayed on me, and I was asked them, why you invite me to church when all these years of knowing you, we have never talked about God. We've never talked about religion. It's never been part of any of our conversations. And all the people that we're connected to, I don't recall God ever being in the conversation. So what's been going on with you? Well, we started going to the church, so we want you to go. And so I said, I'll drive separately. That way I had a way out and an exit. So I could, because I was a runner all my life. I'm going to run again. I had to plan my exit and plan not running because I had been running from myself and all my pain forever. And so that was my MO. That's what I knew. And that's why I was going to stay. So I went into the church, survived. Actually, in the beginning, I stayed out in my car, chain smoking one cigarette after another because I hated God and I hated Christians. I had rejected any Christianity from my youth and childhood because God hated me. So why I'm going to believe in him? It's funny that you can hate someone that you don't believe in.
Right.
Anyway, so I survived that service. And several weeks later, I came down to visit again, and I'm in the weekend party mode versus I did it differently during the week. I only partied 80% of intensity. On the weekends, it was 150%, right? I had calculated down to a science where I had to stop drinking and partaking by a certain time of the weekend to be ready for Monday morning. I had that down to a science. They invited me to church again. All right, so I went. And then a few weeks later, I went again. Okay, my goal was to prove that Christians were liars and were full of horse pucky, right? And well, here's how it went. About 3 months in, I even got signed up to go to a small group setting, and I needed to investigate. I wanted to be curious because my perception of God was he was out to get me, and I just didn't like the process. Somebody tell me, prove to me that I'm right. I just need to be right. On the third week of the small group experience, I decided that I had enough and I was done. This was not going to work for me. I needed to get back to my life and continue on what I was doing. Anyway, a gentleman was in the group. He was actually the lead pastor, and I was sneaking out of the house where the small group met, and I had my hand on the door handle and getting ready to open the door and run. And I heard his voice yelling out, "Where's Rick?" And he came up to me and asked me 3 questions. And he asked me, "Why are you so angry with God? You're searching for God, aren't you? And have you ever really let God into your life and your heart and experienced that, encountered that?" Let's just say I was not kind to him. And I told him to get out of my face. And I actually cussed him out. And I ran out and did the same thing with my friends. And my plan was to exit, disappear, and never be seen again. Let's tell you what happened. 5 days later, I was on my knees. And I told God exactly what I thought of him. And I let a lot of things out. And we duked it out.
He loves it when we do that. There's in the Bible, people have done that. And it's like, yeah, bring it on. He wants us to get it out. He already knows it, but he wants us to tell him.
I told him everything. Yeah. And I told him that he had ruined my life, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and that it was his fault, that everything that happened to me, that it was totally his fault, and that he destroyed me from the beginning, and he could take it where the sign doesn't shine, right? So I went through all that, and I even cried a lot of tears because I was so hurt. And then at the end of that time, it was like God said, "Rick, I understand. I love you. Now will you live for me? Are you willing to live for me?" That rocked my world. And I said yes that day. Yes, I will. And something totally changed in my life from that day. That began the most beautiful journey in my life. That was 15 years ago. And guess what? I couldn't wait to get to church that Sunday. Something rocked my world. I knew that I had met God authentically for the very first time in my life. I had knowledge of God. I had concepts of God. I had things I thought God was in whatever, but that was an encounter. And it turned my world upside down. And so I became connected to the church, and I was driving a long ways because I needed to be there. And these friends of mine, their lives were changing. They offered for me to stay at their house on the weekend so that I could be in a safe place. So they said, "You're going to have to deal with your work and deal with it and during the week, but you can come here Friday through Monday or Sunday. And we'll give you the weekend. Just come and stay and just keep growing, keep doing this." And that got me connected to church. And then 6 months later, I actually moved there and then began a long work commute. That's what God wanted me to do. And became very connected and began leading small groups and doing a lot of volunteering. I knew that I was where I needed to be. But I also know at the same time that I had a lot of issues and struggles and things that I had to overcome. And it became very obvious. I had stopped the drugs and the drinking and the other behaviors, right? But then I was left standing. What do I do with all this stuff inside of me? And that began a journey of processing and understanding. So I studied a lot. I read a lot of books. I stayed around healthy people, but I still didn't know what to do with forgiveness. I didn't know what to do with resentment. I didn't know how to let things out. So my story became pretty apparent in those days, but I was transparent on just some big ticket items, but I couldn't talk about abuses or how I really felt or how I really felt unvaluable, unloved, and that I didn't matter. So then I got a call to ministry and an opportunity came up. Guess what? I stayed with the church that cared for me, loved me as the way I was. I didn't know how to love them back very well or let them into my life in a deep level, right? Because all the walls that had been created, if that makes sense. Right. But I knew that God was calling me to ministry, and I got the call, and they allowed me to come on staff.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is kind of crazy. A man with a checkered past like mine, do I really belong here? But I knew that God was calling me. And so in the beginning part, I did a different thing that I do now. So I started with just small groups and also the foster care ministry that I was directing and overseeing at that time. And then opportunities came up to begin to create support groups, recovery groups, and all of those kind of circles. And I told God, I'm not going back to that. I am not part of that anymore. And he said, that's exactly where I need you. Don't run from where you came from. Run to where you can help people heal and give them a space where they can be valued and loved like you are beginning to feel in your life. So that just grew many different ministry things that I'm responsible to this day. And then it's been a wonderful thing to be someone that was an outcast, someone who belonged, right? And that was the big change in my life. I finally found somewhere that I belonged, and I never felt like I belonged in life.
Yeah, I remember some of those walls. I've seen some of those walls.
And you know what? You just have to chip away at those walls.
So what have you done to get those walls chipped away at? What kind of different things have you used?
We did counseling, everything, different walls that have come down and have healed me. In all the ministries that I oversee, I also participate in or believe in, and I use the same tools. And so that was a very valuable thing. And I started creating people, being a very intentional ministry person. I gave to others what I craved for myself. And that in itself was very healing for me, right? If I need to belong, I need to help others know that they belong. And that was a big feel in ministry. And then a number of years ago, so I went through a lot of different healing and a lot of different understanding of my life. And I worked on a lot of forgiveness, a lot of resentment, and a lot of the anger issues. That was the biggest healing that I was experiencing. And then I would say 5 years ago, when I wanted to understand a lot more of my sexual brokenness and everything, I took a little discovery pathway to go, where can I find a way to open up about that? And I was scared to do it in the arenas that I was working in and ministering in. I needed somewhere else. So guess what happened? That's when I actually discovered Husband Material. And then I think I remember an online experience. I thought, oh, this is so cool. But what opened up for me was a pathway where I could safely begin to just open up even deeper and realize that I had a lot of trauma that I had not addressed. And I needed to go back and be very specific on the trauma, on the things that happened to me, the things that were done to me, the things that I was responsible for, right? And I found safe ways to do that. And Mature, that where we both met, that became quite a pathway where I discovered a lot of that and those tools. Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. You mentioned some of the ministries you're doing. So what exactly are you doing now that you found all this healing? What kind of things are you into?
Well, I am still and in all the process, I also was ordained as a pastor for my church. It was an incredible moment a number of years ago. And I said, how did this lost kid and older, right? How did this happen to me? God, this is unbelievable what you're allowing me to do. So what I get to do now is all of our wholeness and healing ministries at our church, and I direct all those, but I build teams, and I have a whole, 100 and some volunteers, maybe 125, 150 that I get to direct and work with and build and lead and develop for them to do ministry as well as volunteers, right? That's a very exciting time. And also went through several certifications. I coach men online who are hurting, broken, and trying to overcome their sexual brokenness, their traumas, their hurts and their hangups and that kind of thing. I do that online, and also have the opportunity to be on the counseling team at my church as well. So those are a lot of the present day things that I get to do. And it is such an honor.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're single, not necessarily by choice, but it is where you're at. Do you think, in what ways has that helped you in your healing journey and in your ability to serve others and help others? And what ways has that hindered you as well?
Well, I had a lot of broken relationships in the past, and I missed out on certain things, right? Because I ran from relationships, and I could have been married. Well, then again, I could have been married several times, really. I mean, married and divorced, you know what I'm saying? And, but the singleness right now actually works out really well, because it gives me a lot of extra bandwidth to be able to spend time that a lot of people in being married don't have that availability. So it frees up my calendar, it frees up my time, and it frees up my ability as far as just to be available, right? Of course, there's self-care and boundaries and all that we have to keep established when we're working in ministry. But being single gives me more freedom and more latitude to be intentional, to spend time with people, because I love to walk with people and help them know and encounter that they really matter. That is the heartbeat of my ministry heart. I want people to know they matter. And so I get a lot of opportunities to do that. So there's the freedom of being single, and I'm okay with that. Family relationships have been restored over the years. It's beautiful. Also, I get adopted by other families as well. So I guess I have a pretty well-rounded life in that respect. The restoration journey has been so beautiful. To this day, I still think I'm still healing. I'm still overcoming. I still experience triggers, but where I'm at today versus even a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 and 15 is definitely not the person that I was.
Right.
I've also discovered my voice and how valuable it is.
Yes. Yes.
And that's probably one of the biggest things. I have a voice.
Yes, you do.
And my voice is valuable to others. And it's really crazy. One thing that I struggled with in life a lot, which contributes to a lot of my hardships, was I never felt chosen. I never was picked for anything. I was always the last one picked, if picked, right? And I never felt treasured or cherished or chosen. And guess what? That healing of the need to be chosen. First of all, I've been chosen by the Lord, by God, right? Which is ultimate. But people choose me. People want to spend time with me.
Yeah.
It's not always what they need from me. It's actually they are choosing me, and people like me. I like myself now, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
But see, all that trauma, all that the abuse, all the alcoholism, all the drug use, all the physical obstacles blocked all that, because I saw myself in the filter that I was worth nothing, and so that everyone else felt the same way about me, right? But that all came with what I was holding inside. So I think I'm in a really good space now overall. I'll continue to pursue healing, because I think that continues till we go to the next life in heaven, right? Right. And also, I want to be an example of healing for other people, right? And I can look at myself in the mirror and go, thank you, God, for creating me. Thank you, God, for allowing me to be born, right?
Yeah.
And all these things that were a curse have now become a gift in my life.
Right.
And that's where we are.
Absolutely. So any final words for that survivor out there listening? Any words of wisdom or words of advice for that person?
Right. If you are living in shame, and for the abuse person in particular that I'm talking to now, if you're living in shame and fear, tell at least one person. At least start there. and pick that right person, that trusted person that you can take a risk with, and just put a voice, in a beginning voice, to what you feel, what you think, and what you've been through. Take the steps, a step of caring for yourself, because here's the deal. It is not your identity. It's not who you are. It's what's happened to you or around you, but it isn't who you are. And there are a lot of people who have gone through what you've gone through. The details are different for all of us. But guess what? People are here. They exist to love us and to sit with us and to care for us, just as we are, in our pain, in our hardship, in our hurts. And man, it's an incredible opportunity not to live the secrecy of that shame and the secrecy of the punishment. I punished myself for so many years. God has done something so wonderful in my life. But the key is I had to take steps towards my healing, and it didn't all happen at once. It's been progressive. And the more bravery I had, the more courage, the more willing that I was willing to take risk. And for me, I had to let people in, which was and is and always has been the most difficult thing in my life. And I've experienced people in my corner that, man, they didn't run from me. They didn't discard me. This is at church. This is at what we're connected to, and other circles. People loved me right where I was and where I needed. And guess what? I have learned to love myself so much more, and I've learned to love others and approach life authentically and with a sense of compassion and curiosity and love for others. And that's where we're at. Don't give up. Take that risk, and know it hurts, but know there's healing, and there's layers of healing, and you can get healed and learn to live a life of more freedom and be at peace.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Live Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarliveconsulting.com. That is Polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.